to GMIHub Online. We are so thrilled that you are here to join us for another week. I hope you all had a great week. And we're in Ontario, and we had a lot of snow, so I hope you had fun in the snow this week. I'm excited about this particular episode because we are going to be talking about praise and worship music. We're actually going to be talking about the key characteristics of praise and worship music, and we have three of the most influential, I would say they are veterans of praise and worship music. They are songwriters that I'm just so excited. I don't even know what to say anymore. But before I introduce them, I'd love to introduce you to my co-host, Dale Borland.
Hi
Hey,
there,
Dale.
Dale here, and I just want to. I'm so glad you're watching tonight. I mean, we got three amazing guys, three amazing different types of guys, different backgrounds, and with this, we just want to just welcome you. Thank you so much for being a part of this. If you've just visiting for the first time on YouTube and are seeing the stream, and just like it and subscribe to what was going on, and it'd be nice to have you just click the notification bell so you'll know the next time we upload a video, and make a comment down below. We'd love to hear from you. We will converse with you if not during the show, but I will certainly get on and talk with you for sure. Also, we have a website, gmihub.ca, and when you go on there, you'll find a bit more about us. And we have incredible opportunity for you to be a part of what's going on here in the GMI Hub. We have what we call a Hub Happening, and that comes out once a month. And if you go onto the Hub Happening and you put into your email for us, we'll send you that once a month. It's absolutely free, and then you get that what's happening with what's going on. And you also, if you have a song you're releasing, or you're producing an album, or if you're a producer, or if you're a recording engineer, and you want us to talk about what you're doing, let us know what's going on, because we love to let the community know so we can also be a part of what's going on, and we'll announce your concerts and whatever you're doing, your releases on the Hub Happening, and everybody in our community will know. So join us, if you will, and be a part of that community, because we are here to community mentorship and talent growth, and those four areas, that's what we're all about. And so thank you so much for joining us tonight. So let's get to our panelists, shall we, Cheryl?
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to introduce these wonderful men. I'm so excited that we have a returning panelist with us. We have John Chisum. He is from, if you might remember, that he was on, back in, I think, April of last year with Ali Matthews. And he is the president of Nashville Christian Songwriters. He works with a lot of songwriters and is very well connected with them. He was trained actually under the Gaithers, but he was the president of Integrity Music, or not president, but an executive of Integrity Music. He has written, I think, over 400 songs that have been recorded, and he's still recording. He even recently released a song as an artist called How Great with one of his students. I want to welcome John Chisum.
Thank you, Cheryl. Hey, everybody. So good to be here.
It's so good to have you back, John. Alongside John, we have all the way from Winnipeg, we have Steve Bell. Now, Steve Bell is a multi-award winning, internationally known Canadian songwriter. He's a veteran, I consider a veteran indie artist who has independently released 20 CDs, and he's made a lot of sales, over 400,000 units that he has sold. His latest album release is called Wouldn't You Love to Know, which he released during the pandemic in 2020. I am so thrilled to have Steve Bell with us. Hi, Steve.
Hi, everybody.
I'm so glad you're here. And last but not least, we have Brian Doerksen. Brian Doerksen is another multi-award winning, internationally known Canadian songwriter, recording artist, conference speaker. He's a songwriting instructor. He's an author. He is a husband, father, and all that stuff too. But he is well known here in Canada and around the world for songs like, at least I remember, Come Now Is the Time to Worship, Refiner's Fire, and there's a whole slew of other songs that he's well known for. He recently released an album called Hymns for Life. I just want to welcome Brian Doerksen. Thank you so much for being here, Brian.
Great to be with you.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, so let's start with this conversation, gentlemen. Um, we're talking about the key characteristics of praise and worship music. Okay, and I know that all of you have written songs that are praise related, worship related, devotional related. Um, and I'm just curious to find out that when you started writing music, what was the intention? Did you write intentionally saying, I want to write for congregations, or I want to write for just because I want to have that one-on-one with God? Or did you have another motivation behind when you started singing? What was what was your intention behind your songwriting? And we're going to go to John.
Well, I tell you what, I'm so old that we didn't have worship back when I started writing. It was back in the day, it was 1976. I was 18 years old. I'd come to Christ in a very dramatic way. And the first thing I wanted to do was write a song. I didn't grow up in a Christian home, but I grew up in a very musical home. And I just wanted to express my faith. And we were still song leaders back then. We weren't worship leaders. And so I've watched this whole thing over the last 45 years almost. And so it was just an expression, and it grew into a regional ministry and on for all these years. So it was really just to express my love for Jesus, my new love, and to share it with people.
That's awesome. That is awesome. And you've been very successful doing that. Steve, how
Thank
about
you.
you? When you started writing music, was your music, I found your music's more devotional, but was your
Mhm.
intention for that? Or was your intention, did you ever have the intention to make it congregational or any other motivation behind that?
Well, I'm so old, very much like
Here we go.
John, that the whole contemporary praise and worship genre didn't exist either. I sort of came, uh, I started waking up to music when Larry Norman and Stonehill, those guys were doing their thing, and I attended a couple concerts. Chuck Girard. I was mostly, but I spent the first 10 years of my adult life in the bars. I played bars for a good decade in numerous different kinds of bands. And then in my late 20s, early 30s, I had my the faith of my childhood started to become, I never lost it, but it started to become very, very important to me. And and the music just started to reflect it. So I've never sat down to write a Christian song or a worship song or any kind of song. I I use it almost as a way of journaling. It's kind of how I document the path of my spirit or my soul and its relationship to God and all that God has created. So I've written love songs. I've written all kinds of songs. But the more that my faith became central in my experience, the more the songs started to reflect that. So I
Mm.
almost think of my songs more as a prayer journal than as any attempt to write this or that kind of a.
Wonderful.
Yeah, that's almost like a very personal approach. So
Yeah,
and it's a very intimate relationship between you and God put to music, and
right.
it's tender. It's a real nice side to the music, what you can write as an artist.
On occasion written specifically for congregations, and usually that was out of panic. If I was leading worship in my church, and I needed a song to reflect this thought or this scripture because I had a direction I wanted to go. If I couldn't find the song, I would sometimes just write one really quickly. And in most cases, I would think it doesn't really matter if it's not that good because no one's ever going to hear it past this Sunday. And typically,
Well,
those songs end up being the ones that are most repeated because maybe because I wasn't trying or something. I'm not sure.
Brian, when you
Well,
started writing,
well,
what were your motivations?
I
Go ahead.
probably
Go ahead.
should start by echoing that I too am an old
I'm
guy
old. Yeah,
who
I saw that coming.
I started it.
who
Sorry, guys.
Yeah,
That's okay.
yeah, thanks John for starting that,
yeah.
getting us going in that way, but like some of the terminology didn't exist when I started. And so I resonate with both what Steve shared now and what John, what you shared, is that there's a response. Now, what Steve ended with, I think, is really fascinating because my songs are probably more known in the congregational world, but often they were written as a result of a gap revealing itself to me. So let's say, like Steve or John, like I'm asked to like lead worship on a Sunday morning using songs. And as I'm preparing, I have a feeling we need to express something, and I can't find a song that says what that gap is in a mother tongue way to me. Obviously, and by that I mean, you know, there's songs about everything. Like there's nothing new, quote unquote, under the sun. But there's probably maybe not a song that I can sing, put in my mouth and sing as my own. That so then there's like a gap, and then I'll write a simple song to fill that gap. Just like Steve, thinking, well, probably it'll be sung on Sunday and then forgotten, and sometimes it is forgotten, and sometimes it's not. But it was also so it was gap. It was writing for the gap. So if you mean that, if you interpret that to mean, yeah, I was writing deliberately for congregations, I guess in one way I was, but I was writing personally in my musical and lyrical mother tongue to try and fill a gap. And everything that happens after that is out of my control. And I say that in the end, I became a songwriter by accident, because I would have never thought that I had the talent or the musicality or any of those things in order to make a living doing what I do. I just started singing into the gap that was revealed to me, and that's what I still do to this day.
And you're right, a lot of the songs that you have sung are, I think, are still being sung in churches. A lot of them are, which is
Absolutely.
awesome. Now, are you all still leading worship in your own churches? Or do you regularly lead worship, or just as guest worship singers now, or worship leaders now?
Yeah, I'm not currently. I've spent the last 7 years building Nashville Christian Songwriters, and kind of hoping that with releasing some new music, I can reignite that side of my life. But
Mm.
the Lord called me to this 7 years ago, and so that's what I've been doing. I miss it. I miss leading worship. I miss doing the music side, but we follow the Lord, right?
Absolutely, and you're doing an awesome job. I was listening to the little list you have on your website. I'm liking those songs.
Thank you. Thank you.
I
Nice.
am.
Thank you.
um, Okay, so I want to talk about fundamentals, but I know that Dale had alluded to another question, the different frames or different thoughts behind praise, worship, devotional, and congregational. Dale, why don't you express your question or
Well,
thought?
I was just tagging on to exactly what these gentlemen were talking about, because I was thinking there's two trains of thought. There's the corporate worship and the personal worship, personal devotional worship and type of thing. So could you describe how you would approach writing those different types of songs? Like for instance, you talked about almost like a missioned song. Brian was talking about the gap song. He just felt that he has to put one together because there's something that needs to be there. Um, so how does that? How do you approach that in different trains of thought?
Okay, well, let me just say this, and I don't know if this is exactly what you're asking, but sometimes I think people get hung up on when they see an I or a me in a supposed congregational song, and they
Mm,
poke at it and they'll say, well, if it's a congregational song, it should only use plural, we, us. But the thing what I found, both with the songbook in the heart of the Bible, the Psalms, and in my experience, and from the hymn book to all through history of Christian songs, the I, the personal, the devotional can so resonate with the us and the community that when we sing the I, we're singing it as us, right? So
Hmm.
one of my first songs was just a simple setting and take on Psalm 121. I lift my eyes up. to the mountains, where does my help come from? You know, that I lift my eyes, is obviously not just me. It's
Right.
people throughout the ages. It's all of us who are struggling with the some of the harsh elements of reality, of sickness, of various struggles. And we need to kind of lift our eyes. And of course, the context of Psalm 121 wasn't like, you know, instantly about this grand, great God. It was about basically saying, I'm going to lift my eyes to the mountains, those hill places where that's where people think almost like their help, the mountain gods, you know, where they would go up and make their sacrifices for fertility, for prosperity. But my help actually doesn't come from those little shrines on the side of a hill. It comes from the God who made those hills.
Right.
But it's this very personal, vulnerable, intimate expression that becomes universal, right? I mean, the best songs in every genre, folk, singer songwriter, pop, jazz, whatever genre you want to talk about, some of those songs that are very personal resonate and become huge quote unquote hits because everybody identifies with the universal thing that they're talking, the I that they're talking about. So I don't, I, for me, it's always about honesty, about singing truth, about singing what is deeply, deeply, genuinely true to me in that moment. And I leave the resonance part of how big that resonance is going to be up to other people.
I find it interesting that you mentioned the Psalms, and you're right. The psalmists, when they wrote those songs, they wrote out of their struggles and and the trials they were going through. I think David was running away from being killed, for example, and when he felt surrounded, he cried out to God and he sang his songs accordingly. Um, and yet, what's interesting, Brian, is that if someone were to write a song that had I in it today, you're right. They do get hung up on, oh, it's just about you, or it's a singular thing. It's not about the resonance of people gather or taking it on and adopting it for themselves as well. It's just an interesting point. Steve, John, what are your thoughts on
My
on? Go ahead.
my own when I think about worship music, or when I think about different kinds of songs or different kind of songwriting, one has to keep in mind what the goal of it is. So if what I want to do is for whatever reason express my best artistry, I might throw in all kinds of guitar licks or complicated chord changes, or even complex lyrics or whatever. If that's what I want to do, but if I want to lead a congregation into experiencing joining their voices into one voice in praise of their maker, I'm going to choose different things. And there's a humility in doing that work that kind of is not required of other kinds of songwriting, because the humility is about getting out of the way. This isn't about showing my prowess or my vocal acrobatics or my guitar skills. It's about melodies. I don't want to say simple, but singable. And I don't mean that worship music isn't artful. It better be, but it's still done in a way that invites people in to experience common voice, joining our voices in one song. So it's just a different way of thinking about it. So I do have that in mind if I'm going to write a song for an occasion that I want other people to sing. So that's about the only thing I would comment in terms of that.
Singable melodies. I like that.
Can I just say one more thing? The other thing is to keep in
Absolutely.
mind also that not every church is full of accomplished musicians either. right? And so there's also there's a gift to the church in writing songs that can be done by people at a sort of intermediate level of playing. And I think that's a gift. That's something that we can offer the church. And again, it's a certain kind of humility, but it's also understanding that when you're doing that work, you're a servant primarily. You're
Mm.
serving the church.
Yes.
And when we do that, a certain kind of song comes out that can be gorgeous. It can be a hit. It could be all sorts of things that might even be remembered 500 years from now. But its immediate purpose is to serve the church.
I was
Absolutely.
just thinking that was Brian was talking about songs with the I, and you were expressing how people have that attitude of, oh, that's about him. But I'm able to take a song that I could resonate with and sing that with me, I, and make it, even though it's a corporate worship song, it becomes a personal prayer or a personal commitment through that song to God for me. So, I mean, I like some of those songs that have the I, the me, because I can actually see if it applies to me and make it my own, even though someone else has written it.
Hey, if you are just tuning in right now, you are watching GMI Hub Online, and we have three wonderful panelists with us. We have John Chisum from Nashville Christian Songwriters, we have Steve Bell out of Winnipeg, and we have Brian Doerksen out of BC, Abbotsford, BC, joining us. These are veterans in songwriting. In praise and worship and devotional music. And I'm so glad that they are here. And I'm glad that you are here joining us as well. Um, Before I continue on, I want to cue us for our special announcement.
Special announcement coming soon. Stay tuned.
Whoa,
And
that's
yes,
coming up really soon. There must have been
that
a clue in
is.
there somewhere. That little logo that was swaying there, there might have been a clue.
Might have been a
Just
clue, but
saying.
you know
Might have
what?
been.
February 7th is coming and we'll make that
That's right.
announcement
We'll
then.
make that announcement.
Okay.
But I also want you to know we do have our website, gmihub.ca, and go check it out for yourself. You can see all the different things that are on there. On the front page, you can scroll down and you can see what's happening with us. And we'd love to connect with you as well. And you can do that is make sure you send us your email, and we'll get you on our Hub Happening email that goes out once a month, and you can be abreast of what's going on and what's happening with the GMI Hub. Also, if you're just watching for the first time here on the GMI Hub Online, please subscribe. We appreciate that very much. It matters a lot to us to have you subscribe and become part of our subscription. And also, there's a bell there that you can click, and that just gets you a notification every time we upload a video. So we'd love you to do that too. Also, please take some time, make a comment. We love to hear from people. So if you have the time to make a comment, that would be just amazing. And hit that little like, little thumbs up. That'd be great. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you so much, Colin and Dorothy. Thank you so much, Victor, for tuning in with us. Thank you so much, Faith, for tuning in with us, and Tamara. And if you have any questions or you want to list your favorite songs from these artists, please go ahead and put it in the chat. I'm just curious to see what you would, what you come up with. It'll be awesome to hear. But
Yeah.
let's get back to this conversation. All right. So we were talking about the different thoughts behind um, writing the different types of songs, whether it's congregational and filling in a gap, and what goes on with that, making sure songs are singable melodies, and that actually when doing songs for congregations, it is actually serving. It's a service to the church, especially for churches that may not have instrumentalists or singers that are at the expert level. They may be intermediate or even beginner for that matter. Um, and that it takes humility to get out of the way of your own talents. Um, so I guess my next question is, um, out of all of this, what are some fundamentals that you have learned, gentlemen, over the years, as you were writing songs? When you found songs that were more successful or more received, what do you think were the characteristics that actually made those songs work for, I'll say, for congregations, for example?
Well, I'll be happy to start on that. And in my work with songwriters, I talk a lot about a song continuum. That on the far, if you can imagine this, on the far left would be more devotional. And by that, I mean more deeply personal devotional, like me sitting at my piano, just playing, singing to Jesus, worshiping, 28 minutes long. And that song's never really intended for congregational worship or commercial worship, but there might be something in that that could be harvested and taken, an idea, a nugget, a phrase, a melody that could be taken and then crafted to where it was singable, everything Steve and Brian have been talking about, that it would really be more universal. So a lot of times when I'm working with songwriters, they're still so deeply into their gift that they're not really writing for a congregation. They're really writing for their own personal devotion, and it's still too personal. It hasn't been brought to the point of being corporate, even if it does say, I lift my eyes up to the mountains where my help comes from. I mean, that's beautifully crafted. Brian, one of my favorite songs of all time, since you mentioned it a moment ago, but that's where I start. It's like you feel this deep devotion and this deep passion, but until you can turn that outwardly to be facilitating worship, you're still serving yourself and your devotion, which is good. That's great. But if you want other people to use it, there has to be at least a certain level of craft. And so that's kind of where we start on that continuum between strictly devotional all the way through to what you hear on the radio or sung in the mega churches. And both sides of the spectrum are great. But if you want to be sung by a lot of people, there is at least some amount of craft and crafting and just kind of designing the song, to include what these guys have been saying. So hope that makes sense.
Is there a pressure though to actually simplify the song when it comes to that mindset?
I don't think so. I think
Mm.
that songs that are the most, accessible they might be. I think they're well crafted. That doesn't mean dumbed down. That doesn't
Right.
mean oversimplified. I think writing simply is an incredibly hard thing to do, like any
Mm-hmm.
art. Whether
Of
it's
course,
writing
yeah.
prose, right? And so if you write with kind of an opaque sense where it only means something to you, well, that's not simplified for the greatest number of people.
What if I'm thinking about what you're saying here, and I'm thinking of the songs that are known today, and um, uh, wow, thinking of I know there's a song called Waymaker I've heard quite a lot during the summer months. Um, I hear songs from groups like the Hillsongs and Elevations, and yet their songs seem like they're more, as you say, here on the radio, but yet they're being sung in congregations. It's really interesting. And then I think about the songs you've written, and some songs have been birthed out of I don't know, they seem simple, I guess, easy to grab onto. Right now, I guess I'm going in my head with how have you seen music change, praise and worship and music change over the years? You've all mentioned that you're veterans. You've all said old, but I'll say veterans. How have you
Thank you.
seen the change? you know, because I'm and this is kind of leading a little bit now going into the hymns. Now, Brian, you've camped on a little bit of the hymns, so I'm hoping to hear from you about this as well. But there are songs that were written several hundred years ago, and I know you all were not born when those songs were written. Okay,
You don't know. You don't
so
know that, Sarah.
just go with me. Just trust me on that one, okay? but but I think of hymns, and those hymns they don't necessarily have I don't know if they can say they were simple, but they I guess carried words or something about them. I'm not even sure what it is, but that still stands the test of time today. And then I think about songs that, like I said, I think of call and answer type songs like, oh, I'm going to really go back in time here. Hail Jesus, you're my king. And people repeating that, right? I think of things like that. And then I think
Mhm.
about songs today that are being written. Like there's been such a transition. I don't know. Have you all seen that as well?
Well, man, yeah,
Speak.
and this the pace of change is changing, right?
Mm.
Recently they've done some studies just analyzing, let's say, CCLI top 50 or 100 songs, and they recognize that in the last 20 to 30 years, the lifespan of a song is significantly shorter. And so now, I think what John was describing about simplicity is key, and his qualifier towards the end was, you know, I guess the way I would say it is simple and bad is really easy. Simple and great, the the the
Mm,
the
Yeah.
simplicity on the other side of complexity is really, really hard, and
that's
it
good.
has to be earned. Okay, and that's
Mm.
what gives songs depth, weight, staying power. That's how we have the hymns, right? Because there's a simplicity to some of those hymns, but they have endured because of the weight of them, right? They're not simplistic, they
Yeah.
are
Hmm.
true at multiple levels. Um, and so, but what's happened is with the speed of, the curve up and the curve down of a song, as it speeds up, the whole pace of change. Um, I do get concerned about the deformative nature of that pace. Like every song we sing is formative or deformative, right?
Yeah.
So either songs that we sing form us and shape us into being Christ like, or they form and shape us into being like children of the empire, Christian nationalism, power, military, all of that kind of stuff. And so
Mm.
you, content matters, but also the way and how quickly things change matters. And I think
Mm,
one of the reasons why I so value some of the great hymns is because when a song has been sung for that long, um, the formative part of it, still forming, still shaping, is so good for our souls. It's good
mm,
for us to just humbly say we still need the sound of previous generations as much as we need to encourage the next generation to write their own. So, I mean, there's a lot in there, but those are just a few thoughts on formative and deformative.
I'd like to comment on that a little
interesting.
bit, if I may.
Yes. Yes.
Could I add another word to what John has said and what Brian has said too? And when I said simple earlier, I think everybody understood. I didn't mean
Yeah.
simplistic, but I think I like the word elegant.
Mm.
Mm,
That there can be something that is singable to a non-specialist, something that can be remembered, something that can be sung by whether it's an elderly person or a child or a champion musician that is still beautiful. And I think that elegance is something that is like the other two have said, it's kind of hard won. That takes a bit of effort, and it's the same thing with lyrics. I think lyrics can be simple and elegant, but they're like a good song. It's like a what am I going to say? It's like an iceberg. That the heft is not even visible. The biggest part of the iceberg you'll never see, and you have this little bit at the top that has all the blaze and the glory to it, but the real iceberg is below the surface. And I
There's a
think
song
when
in there,
song,
Steve. There's a song in there,
yeah,
right there, what you just said. That's
yeah,
good.
but I think that it behooves us as songwriters to do that inner work, and I think, and you can hear it. you can hear a song that has been hastily put together by sort of grabbing pious cliches that rhyme and crafting a simple melody, and everybody likes it. It's fine, and it serves an immediate purpose. There's another song that's got an elegance and a heft behind it, and you can feel the weight of the author's depth of relationship with Christ and the issues that we face as a people, and who has expressed that in this song. You can just feel it, even though the surface is still, fairly simple. So, does that make any sense? Yeah.
Yeah, that's like what Ryan was saying, only differently about the crafting, the using your abilities as a songwriter to craft the wording so that there's more to it and it means more than.
Yeah, but it requires soul craft of the
Absolutely,
of the
yeah.
writer. Yeah, I mean, I think, and also I think we don't quite give enough weight to the power of songs. I love, Brian, what you said about formation or deformation. That we are formed by the songs that we sing. We let songs in without realizing the power they have over us. And someone said the reason why songs are so powerful is that we don't have defenses up against them. So if someone comes along and says, let me tell you what to think, you're going to go, whoa, and you're going to put up all the guards, and then you're going to make sure nothing gets past that you don't want. But the minute you put a hooky melody on it, we'll not let anything in. Right. So, and then that thing can kind of get lodged in your heart somewhere, and it might explode 20 years later. You don't even know it's there anymore. And so I think I'm going to overstate something, and please just let me overstate it for the thing. But I don't think we write worship songs because God needs to be told how wonderful God is. I don't think worship is really for God. I think God's fine. I think God knows who God is. There's mutuality in the Trinity. We don't add anything to the love that's already there, and the friendship and the fellowship and the beauty and the communion that is God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. We add nothing to that. God is sufficient. The worship that we hymn the qualities of God, and we get a lot of those qualities through the life and teachings of Jesus, that we hymn those things in order to form us, that we can be in the likeness of the one that we worship. We write these things for the church because the church needs to sing them to be formed. So what I'm getting to now is the importance of songwriters being theologians. And I don't think we've really said that deeply enough in the church, that as long as someone can write a hooky melody or string some rhymes together, they get to do this work. If we go into the hymns, you look into the work of Charles Wesley. His brother was the preacher, but Charles Wesley was no theological slouch. And in the end, there's very few people that can quote John Wesley's sermon. There's a lot of people that can quote Charles Wesley's songs. And that should make all of us songwriters afraid, and be more careful and do our homework.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well said, Steve. Yeah, there was Charles wrote 19 verses to "Oh for a Thousand Tongues."
Really?
19?
And we
We only
struggle
sing
with
4.
the second verse chorus, right? 19. Crazy.
Wow. But you talked about weight, and it makes me think about the songs that have more weight must have a story behind them that caused that weight to be there. If that makes any sense. For example, you mentioned Charles Wesley, and if I'm not mistaken, if he's the one that's saying "It is well with my soul," the story behind that was because he lost his family. They to a ship that sunk or something like that. If I'm not
that
mistaken.
was actually not Wesley, but that was Horatio Spafford.
But that's the story. Yeah.
Yeah. And the story there is that his wife and 4 daughters were sailing ahead to England and were shipwrecked. She survived. He got the telegram, survived alone. And when he was passing by that area where his daughters perished, the captain told him, we're in that area. And he went up to the side, and he started reflecting, and he started writing the words, "When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll." I don't understand, actually, as a father of 4 daughters myself, how somebody could start writing those words at that point. But that's how the story goes. And it was attested by a later, he ended up having another daughter later on in life, and she tells that story. So
We have a modern day equivalent of this, Brian, but that's your 215 song that we had in Canada this last summer, a crisis, a huge crisis that we're still reeling from. And one of our songwriters needed to express that for us. And you put that into words for all of us in melody, and you worked with Cheryl Bear. But you wrote that lament. You wrote that, and it was as honest and as raw as anything could be. But it had all those qualities of prayer, praise, humility, of offering like incense to God, the agony, the anger. And I mean, that's what the Psalms do. These are the Psalms when they talk about the enemies or the destruction or the disappointments or the bitterness. That's because those things happened. And they knew that the only place that could be properly and fully expressed and received was before God. And so that's what they did. And those are the 150 Psalms that we have.
yeah. And what's interesting actually when we think about that is that when the Psalms were being written, right, they were started maybe by an individual, then taken up by a little community of faith, and then the scholars tell us that the Psalms were hammered out over generations. Okay, so because there were an oral culture, not a written culture, it took multiple generations for a song, let's call it, to be actually finished. And then once it was finished, it became to function like a companion for people on their journey, like the 23rd Psalm, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. So that became a companion, just like It Is Well became a companion, like Spafford didn't know that those words would have the weight or the resonance 150 years later, right? But if the psalm or if the song becomes a faithful companion to people on their journey, then the weight of it grows with each new companion that it accompanies, right? Like it's like it becomes this traveling, like I honestly, like Steve, like your song In Memoriam that you wrote for after the death of your dad. I mean, I'm just about losing it right now, just thinking about what you did with that song, because what you did was you took something that was exceptionally personal but universal at the same time. In other words, everybody is going to lose a parent, right? We're all going to go through it. What you then did was became a guide or a companion for me on my grief journey as I was even still processing the death of my mother. So the circumstances are different. The details of some of the lines are different, but the emotion, the feeling inside me that goes, this is truth, right? That the Cheryl, you were talking about the weight, that is so resonating in me that it becomes I don't know even what the right word is. I'm searching for the right word, but songs become, the word that's coming to me now is like a companion for each of us on our journey. And when we talk about the biggest context, let's say, of congregational songs, what we're trying to do is write, curate songs that become companions for our congregations, that help form them into this Christ-like character, this Christ-like trust. And
that's so rich.
Well said.
That is
Yeah.
just so rich. Well said.
Oh, yeah. I've never personally thought of a song being companion, but it makes so much sense. It really does. It's and I can now understand. I see what you're saying. If you we can relate to certain things, and it's funny. and when we talked to some other artists in previous shows, we talked about something similar, when people sing about their experiences and it seems to resonate. We've been calling it authenticity, but we didn't. I've never heard it as a companion. So I think that's a beautiful picture, a beautiful picture of what
Mhm.
a song can be. It's a musical companion that comes alongside us and helps us along in our journey. That's beautiful,
Mm.
Brian. Thank you so much for sharing
Mhm.
that.
The thing is about songs, which is, and if you've all experienced this and have been told this, that it brings up memories, of if you've heard a song when you were younger and you hear it again, it brings up a moment, that song, and it becomes a special thing to you. And I think that there is a lot of power as a songwriter to be able to take that and make that something that, especially when we come into praise and worship, make that something that resonates with people on a spiritual level in the same context.
Yeah. And I think both John and Brian would agree with me. I hope, I think, but that one of the problems with songs now being so almost like there's almost a planned obsolescence to them. They come in fast and they're gone fast. But then the community memory doesn't get connected and it doesn't get
Mm.
remembered. Songs also have that ability to like companion us, but to help us remember the journey that brought us here. And so we
Yeah,
all have,
exactly.
we have songs that we can sing now with celebration, but we also remember that we sang that at, John McIver's funeral 10 years ago and what that did for us at that time. And so to also
Mhm.
remember as worship leaders and as church people that we need them not just to give us a good, warm, fuzzy feeling on a Sunday morning, that these things, they're attached to memory, deep memory, and they're attached to shared memory. And that
That's
is
true.
not insignificant in the church. And to some degree, we need to resist too much of always being enamored by the new glittery thing. We always
Mhm.
need new songs. We always need to refresh the lake, of course. But that doesn't mean we despise the old because those things carry deep memory. And one of the
Yeah.
issues, I think, in North American culture is we've lost deep memory. And when
Mm.
that happens, we become vulnerable to every wind. We become vulnerable to every
Mm.
movement. And that can be very, very destructive.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have different ways of writing songs? Do you have one method of doing, say, I'll have a theme and I'm going to make sure that the theme's like, that's once was told me by a songwriter that he does the Lord of the Rings theory, which means everything has to point to the theme of the song. So he would write his verse, but it has to pertain to the theme. There's a different philosophy is I'll tell a story in my song. I'll put my words don't have to rhyme. I'm making up a story. Are they, it's just, so what mindset is it for you when you're writing a song? Maybe like you might have a commissioned song. I guess that's what else would you call the one you're writing for the gap? You're looking for a song. How do you start that? What's your process?
Yeah, well, I mean, goodness, there's all kinds of ways that it starts for me. Normally, gosh, there's no normal. That's just even a crazy word to even say. It's an
Yeah, exactly.
inspiration is just such a bizarre word because just that's kind of like luck of the draw, waiting for you to be inspired. But it generally, and song, I write a lot of different kinds of songs, whether it's a personal song for me as a little more of an artist or a congregational song. It generally starts with a phrase or an idea that feels different and unique and gets me excited. And it's almost always the primary hook. It's almost always the title.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Rarely is it a top line. I wrote a song
Mhm.
2 years ago that actually started with a top line, and then I just wrote till I figured out what it was about. But it really is something that gets a hold of me, an idea that I can't let go, and I usually write it in about a day. If it doesn't
Mhm.
happen in an hour or two, then if it's really kind of grabbing my soul, then I'll work on it about a day and a half, and then it's done. So there's not a formula for me. It's more of a feel
Mhm.
thing. Does
Mhm.
that make sense, you guys?
Mhm. Mhm.
Absolutely, yeah.
Mine often start with a constellation of words I'll read in a book. Just and it's not even necessarily the meaning. It might be just like a set of 4 or 5 words. I just like how they sound sometimes. And then and then I can
Mhm.
imagine all kinds of lines that come up to it that give it meaning. So here's these
Mm-hmm.
5 words that I like. So I've got a song called "A Sorrow for Connoisseurs," and I read those words in a book. I can't even remember what the book is, so I can't credit the author. But then I just started thinking about what's a sorrow for connoisseurs. So, and then also thought, well, love is a sorrow for connoisseurs. Love is that thing that causes us the most amount of pain if we do it right. The reason why I'm suffering this week is because I loved my brother-in-law who died last week, and
Yeah.
it's the suffering and the sorrow is because of the love, and it's exquisite. An exquisite pain. And so
Yeah.
I saw that a sorrow for connoisseurs, and I led up to it. And I don't even remember the context of what the original author, meant by it at all. So that
Hmm.
kind of thing really happens to me a lot.
That's
Mm,
so good, Steve. And I think art inspires art, right?
mm,
So,
hmm
and me watching a film, reading a novel, something will catch me almost out of the
Mm-hmm.
side. It's like
Yeah,
almost subconsciously. And John, what you're describing there, one of the ways I would describe it is God doesn't give us songs; He gives us seeds, right?
mm,
And I hate it. I hate it when people say God gave me a song, because then they usually play a song, and I think, well, if God gave you that song, He's a terrible songwriter.
That's right.
Um, God, God
Yeah.
does
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
God does not give us songs. We get seeds, right? We get
Right.
Mm-hmm.
ideas. We
yeah,
see a gap. We have a conviction.
Mm-hmm.
We want to say something. And I'm like
Right.
John. Like I'll get a phrase or a little melody, and I'll go, there it
yeah,
is. That's the
yeah,
seed. Like
yeah,
Steve
Mm-hmm.
hears a phrase, a few words.
Right.
There's the seed, and
Yeah.
then
yeah,
I say, what happens to the seed depends upon the quality of soil into which it falls, and it
Mm-hmm.
So
also
good.
Absolutely.
it
Mm.
means that what kind of personality that you could take the exact same seed, right? The same phrase, and you could
yeah.
plant it in John, in Steve, and me, and you would get 3 completely different
Mm-hmm.
songs,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
and
That's
Very
true.
true.
they would all
Yeah.
be good in different ways, and they would touch
Mm-hmm.
Right.
different people in different ways. So I think for songwriters out there, if you want to grow in this, I mean, one of the things I would say is, work on the quality of your soil. Like,
Yeah,
how are you mulching your life? How are you preparing yourself for the creative seeds that are going to come? Everything from your character to musical training to
Mm.
reading great books,
Yes. Yes.
mm,
um,
Yes. Yes.
watching inspiring films, because all of those things are either formative or deformative and prepping us for
Mm-hmm.
what's going to come through us. So,
So
Right.
good.
It
So
almost
that's it.
good,
sounds
John.
like you're talking about a description, a job description, and an application for a songwriter to go through these types of things in order to bring yourself to the place where these experiences will allow you to write better.
Yeah, and
Hmm
the thing that I say to the writers a lot is don't write on empty. And
Hmm.
Christian writers are the worst about thinking all they've got to do is sit in a room and God's going to download a song. And He might download a lot of seeds, like Brian said. But if you're not if you're not a skilled writer, you know, then you're not going to know what to do with those seeds. And so
Hmm.
add knowledge to your craft, learn to be a great songwriter so that when you get those seeds, you know what to do with them.
Yeah, and there also is, I think with a lot of songwriters. I mean, when in my earlier songwriting, when I was a teenager, I could only write at 2 o'clock in the morning if some woman had just told me that we were not going to get together as a couple, and I was brokenhearted. Like I needed the heartbreak, I needed the drama, I needed all of that to write a song. And then I remember it was in my early 20s, all of my songs were kind of heartbroken, personal sort of thing. And all of a sudden I looked at my body of songs and I got disgusted. I thought, I'm repulsed by me. And I'm not going to write another song until I can write something that's not about me and that's not heartbreak induced. And I didn't write another song for almost 10 years.
Wow.
So
Oh, wow.
it took me quite a while to get past that, and then come to almost the big boy or the adult sort of version where I said, no, this is a craft. It takes effort and skill. If you want to play piano, you probably have to run some scales, all those kinds of things. And I started to learn to do what others have talked about: read, pay attention to poetry, pay attention to art, keep my antenna up, cultivate my own spirituality, my own faith, my own integrity, all those sorts of things, and realize that when you're in this work, there's nothing in your day, awake or asleep, that doesn't feed into this craft. Every bit of it does. And so then to be very, very deliberate and mindful about how we walk in this world and how we receive and what we do with that information and how we file things so that they are, so they form rather than deform us. So all those things. And then what happens though is that all of a sudden life comes alive in an amazing way, because everything is a seed after a while. Everything, there's just seeds everywhere, whether you see them or not. They're floating through the air all the time. And it just takes just the right moment and the right bit of open soil, and bam, magic happens,
Well, I got to ask a question, because you're all three of you here, and I think this is a great time to ask. What about writer's block? How do you overcome that writer's block?
I'll be bold. I don't believe in writer's block. I think that that's just this giant umbrella that we throw a bunch of things in. If we're stressed, if we're depressed, if we are if we're unresourceful in what Brian was saying, and reading and listening, art inspires art. If we're being lazy, then we're not going to be very productive. And people, and the other thing I'd add to that is a lack of skills. You just don't understand how to start with a hook and drive everything toward that one big idea. So I debunk writer's block. I'm not sure what the other guys think about that. I think it's just this catch-all term that is meaningless, and it really is reflective of our own lack of discipline and lack of ability to just resource ourselves. I'm really
That's really harsh,
guy,
dude.
I'm just like,
You said earlier, you said earlier that you're working on a song and it's not working, and you put it aside and maybe come back to it later.
Well, I think sometimes you only have writer's block because you have an idea of what should be happening, right? So there's never a day that I can't write a lousy song. So there's I can always write a lousy song. So if I can't write a good one, then write a lousy one. I don't have to play it for anybody. I know Randy Newman. Do you guys know Randy Newman's songwriting? He writes a song a day, 5 days a week, Monday to Friday.
Oh yes.
He gets up in the morning. And he will not take calls, or this is how it used to be. He will not take calls or go to meetings or even go for coffee till he's written a song. And so he said, so if I wake up at 8 and I have to be somewhere at 9, I have 1 hour. And he'll just grab a newspaper article. He'll make it rhyme. It could be nonsensical, but it has form. It has at least a verse and a chorus and a bridge. And he says, I never have to play it for anybody. But there's something about that sort of just constantly showing up to the work that it somehow kind of keeps that soil tilled and signifies to the soul that you're ready and you're waiting, and it tends to unleash things eventually, right?
Yeah, I love the way you said that, till the soil, because we talk about the seed of inspiration for the song. It's in the soil. The soil's got to be prepared for that. You got to, like you say, till that soil, ready to plant that seed.
Yeah. Brian, do you get long writers?
Well, all I'll say, I mean, this is a huge subject, okay, is that John is definitely on to something in that there is a thing where writers want to hide behind, I think, this thing. So one of the things I often end up talking about is this thing called resistance. And that the biggest obstacle we have to writing is not stuff that's going on out there, it's the resistance inside us. Okay? And so there's that. And I agree with Steve that there is so much of writing that is simply just rolling up our sleeves and doing the work. However, I have experienced about a 5-year block where I went through a wordless winter and I couldn't write. And because I was so wounded and so devastated by a church blow up as a sensitive relational person, I found myself unable to write until I came out the other side of enough time, enough healing, and enough fresh perspective. So, but most of the time, I absolutely agree with John and with Steve's suggestion too. I think that's the way it works.
Do you know what? I once had a 4-year writer's block, writer's block, whatever you want to call it. But like you, Brian, it was trauma induced. It wasn't, I had just been to Palestine. It was during the Second Intifada. I walked right into a war zone and saw things that people shouldn't have to see, and didn't know how to process that when I came back. And so I found that I had nothing to say for 4 years. But when I look back, that wasn't writer's block. That was gestation and trauma processing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And there are times where you just have to say, this isn't the time to write. But I wouldn't call it writer's block. That's all. Not in retrospect.
Right.
Yeah.
I went through 9 years. There was almost a decade I didn't write, but I was just trying to find my way in life and ministry, and it just, I had left some trauma, and I agree. I mean, but again, that stress and depression and trauma, and I don't know. I have a little bit of an issue with just that giant term, because I think it can be traced to very specific things. But
there's another thing, if I could just bring it up, and I think it's important, is that often I don't want to write songs because I can't write songs as good as my heroes do. And I find that is really. Yeah, and I read Father John of Kronstadt, just in his devotion book called My Life in Christ. There's this one prayer that changed my life, and it's, "Oh Lord, help me not be wounded by the beauty of another." And there's something in that really kind of went straight to my heart. And I realized I'm never going to write Bruce Cockburn songs, and I would kill for any one of his songs. It's not going to happen. But I am the best writer of Steve Bell songs on the planet.
Amen.
And my job is to do that work, and to let God do with that work what God would like to do, and then go home and read a book.
Wow. That's a great
That's
way
an
to wrap
incredible
that up.
I think
Wow.
I think that's a really good word of wisdom there to wrap this time up.
Yes.
Comparing yourself to others is probably the worst thing you can do as an
Killer.
artist. Yeah, so absolutely. But so I just pray that if you're watching tonight and something that these three men have said as you've gleaned and you'll be able to apply that, then we've done our job. We really have. We thank you for joining us. I do have one last question. And that question is, if you had 3 things to say to somebody who is aspiring to be a worship writer, songwriter, worship, praise, and worship songwriter, what 3 things would you say? If you want to say it all together or something we talked about already, that's fine too. But I mean, 3 things that you think you would say to them as a matter of encouragement or counsel.
Don't quit your day job.
That's after you hear the song. No, just kidding.
Yeah, well, I think I'm going to say a couple of things that if, because so much of this is sort of what do you want to get out of it, right? If you really want to get out of it as a sort of a rock and roll career, that could be problematic, or whatever. But tend to your soul, tend to your craft, humbly do your best, and leave the rest to God.
That's four. That's good though. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, it's hard to beat that, Steve. Amazing. And I would say to dig down. Number one would be dig down to your true, authentic worship expression. Right? I mean, instead of imitating and just adding to the fray. Right? So be authentic, I guess. Number two would be to add to your craft, to not depend just on inspiration, but add to your craft. And the third would be to make time to resource yourself every single day.
Good.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, ditto to all of those. I mean, I would say probably self-care. Like live your life in such a way that it's sustainable and that you flourish in your life. Being a martyr is not going to make you a good songwriter. Probably to learn the craft, like John is saying. Like there's so much. It's so much fun learning the craft of songwriting. And then three is an expression that my friend Jaylene Johnson from Winnipeg says often. She'll do her newsletters, "Hey, beautiful you," which reminds me of the quote Steve just gave. Is instead of being wounded or being put off by the beauty of the other, to each of us to be the beautiful me that we're meant to be, and actually know so deeply that we're loved, that it's even possible that's possible, right? That we are beautiful. So yeah.
Awesome.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
I
Wow,
appreciate
this
you
has
guys
been
sharing your hearts today. You've been really open with us, and we really appreciate that.
Thanks for the
that
invitation.
is
Absolutely.
well,
Thank you so much.
This has been such a rich conversation. I'm taking all the imagery now in my head, and I've not seen music the way I now see music in a whole different light because of all of you. So thank you so much for sharing. I'm tempted to ask you back again because I'm sure there's so many more questions that we could ask. There have been people that have been typing in on our chat. So thank you so much for Tim and Tamara, David, for also adding your comments and sharing your thoughts. They had some questions too. One was about lyrics. Could the majority of change that we were talking about change be based on lyrics? They have a question about that. And I think there was a common theme basis for future songs, knowing and healing. I think knowing and feeling, I think, is what was a comment as well. So there are people that are responding to this. And I'm curious to hear your answers. At the same time, I know that what we ended with is just so rich.
Yeah,
it is so rich. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us, for sharing your thoughts. Don't run away, okay? Audience, thank you so much for being with us. I'm so glad that you're able to share your thoughts and your comments. Keep writing them in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. And if there's any questions, we're happy to send them to these three gentlemen for their responses. You'll get a personal response, so to speak, from them. So thank you so much for doing that. And as a reminder, you are looking at GMIHub online. If you haven't already, feel free to hit the like button and subscribe so that you could be one of the first people to know when we are putting on this particular show, and you get to hear our guests. For those of you who have subscribed, thank you so much. We so appreciate you. I don't know if you knew this, Dale, but we have over 200 subscribers now.
Yes,
So
I just
we
found
are
that at the
so
beginning, and
thrilled.
that's yeah, that's it's fabulous to have all those people joining in and supporting us, and appreciate you, love you guys, and if you could tell your friends about what we're doing, if you really like us, I really appreciate that. And hit the notification bell. You'll know the next time we upload a video. And you want to know more about us, go to gmihub.ca. That's our website. And gmihub.ca, you can connect with us and send us your email. That way we can actually get a hold of you and correspond with you and send you our hub happenings. It's a monthly newsletter which you will get in email. So let's just keep our community growing stronger and stronger every day.
You could also follow us on social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. So feel free to follow us on all those special social medias. But in the meantime, please remember that GMI Hub is here to encourage unity, community, mentorship, and talent growth. There, we'll do it that way. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
God bless.
Special announcement coming soon. Stay tuned.